Hi. In section 30 of Counsels and Maxims, Schopenhauer discusses the relation between nature and abstract rules of conduct and the role of practice in affecting our behavior and changing our habits. He also warns against affectation and phoniness in social conduct. Here's what he writes. No man is so formed that he can be left entirely to himself to go his own ways. Everyone needs to be guided by a preconceived plan and to follow certain general rules. But if this is carried too far, and a man tries to take on a character which is not natural or innate in him, but is artificially acquired and evolved merely by a process of reasoning, he will very soon discover that nature cannot be forced, and that if you drive it out, it will return despite your efforts. Naturam expellis furca, tamen usque recurret. This is a well-known Latin proverb. Expel nature with a pitchfork, and always she returns. To understand a rule governing conduct towards others, even to discover it for oneself and to express it neatly, is easy enough. And still, very soon afterwards, the rule may be broken in practice. But that is no reason for despair, and you need not fancy that it is impossible to regulate your life in accordance with abstract ideals and maxims, and that it is better to live just as you please. Here, as in all theoretical instruction that aims at a practical result, the first thing to do is to understand the rule. The second thing is to learn the practice of it. The theory may be understood at once by an effort of reason, and yet the practice of it acquired only in course of time. A pupil may learn the various notes of an instrument, of music, or the different positions in fencing, and when he makes a mistake, as he is sure to do, however hard he tries, he is apt to think it will be impossible to observe the rules when he is set to read music at sight or challenged to a furious duel. But for all that, gradual practice makes him perfect, through a long series of slips, blunders, and fresh efforts. It is just the same with other things. In learning to write and speak Latin, a man will forget the grammatical rules. It is only by long practice that a blockhead turns into a courtier, that a passionate man becomes shrewd and worldly wise, or a frank person reserved, or a noble person ironical. But though self-discipline of this kind is the result of long habit, it always works by a sort of external compulsion, which nature never ceases to resist, and sometimes unexpectedly overcomes. The difference between action in accordance with abstract principles and action as the result of original innate tendency is the same as that between a work of art, say a watch, where form and movement are impressed upon shapeless and inert matter, and a living organism, where form and matter are one, and each is inseparable from the other. Let me run over that really quickly again. The comparison he's making is that action in accordance with abstract principles, where you're just following the rules because you know that's the rule, he compares this to some artificial product like a watch, form impressed upon inert matter. In terms of your character, this is what you're doing when you're following the rules. But, on the other hand, action, the result of an original innate tendency, is like a living organism. So Schopenhauer seems to be here arguing for the sort of the ultimate priority of what our character is like, what our inner nature is like in determining our actions. He continues. There is a maxim attributed to the Emperor Napoleon, which expresses this relation between acquired and innate character, and confirms what I have said. Everything that is unnatural is imperfect. A rule of universal application, whether in the physical or in the moral sphere. The only exception I can think of to this rule is aventurine, a substance known to mineralogists, which in its natural state cannot compare with the artificial preparation of it. Again, in this connection, let me utter a word of protest against any and every form of affectation. It always arouses contempt. In the first place, because it argues deception, and the deception is cowardly, for it is based on fear. And secondly, it argues self-condemnation, because it means that a man is trying to appear what he is not, and therefore something which he thinks is better than he actually is. To affect a quality and to plume yourself upon it is just to confess that you have not got it. Whether it is courage, or learning, or intellect, or wit, or success with women, or riches, or social position, or whatever else it may be that a man boasts of, you may conclude by his boasting about it that that is precisely the direction in which he is rather weak. For if a man really possesses any faculty to the full, it will not occur to him to make a great show of affecting it. He is quite content to know that he has it. That is the application of the Spanish proverb, herradura que chocolatea clava la falta. A clattering hoof means a nail gone. In other words, if somebody's making noise about how courageous or good with women they are, it's the perfect indication that they're not. It's phony, it's a false front. The people who have those qualities don't boast about them, they just have them. To be sure, as I said at first, no man ought to let the reins go quite loose and show himself just as he is, for there are many evil and bestial sides to our nature which require to be hidden away out of sight, and this justifies the negative attitude of dissimulation, but it does not justify a positive feigning of qualities which are not there. See, conceal what you are somewhat, but don't pretend to be what you are not. That is affectation. It should also be remembered that affectation is recognized at once, even before it is clear what it is that is being affected. And finally, affectation cannot last very long, and one day the mask will fall off. Nemo potest personam diufere fictam, says Seneca, ficta cito in naturam suam recidunt. No one can preserve long in a fictitious character, for nature will soon reassert itself. That's the end of section 30. So what we have here, I think especially good advice about affectation, seems to fit our social media culture as well. The person making the most noise about his qualities is the person who does not have them, since to have them is not to need to boast of them. And then, of course, the final warnings as well, that affectation is recognized instantly. People can sniff out a phony, and the mask will eventually fall off, and you shall be humiliated. Back to our original point at the start of the section, that nature will ultimately return and have its way. Despite that, however, it's not worthless to try to practice over a long period of time to acquire better habits and better character than we already have. So that's section 30 of Schopenhauer's Counsels and Maxims. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk about section 31 in the next video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.